Amid everything else we're juggling in midlife, bodies changing, energy stretched thin, nervous systems running hot, there's one thing that often slips to the bottom of the list: intimacy. Modern couples are reporting higher levels of burnout and lower levels of desire than ever before. But today's guest, Elana Auerbach, says that doesn't mean the spark is gone. Elana is a sensuality educator and author of The Sure Thing, a shame-free, deeply practical guide designed to help couples reconnect with desire, closeness, and joy, even in the thick of real life. We're going to be talking about why intimacy changes in midlife and how creating safety, simplicity, and small rituals of connection can transform not just your sex life, but your relationship as a whole. Thank you for joining me. We got a lot to talk about today, Elana.
Yes, we do. It's an ever-expanding topic.
And I am absolutely 100% depending on you to give us all the information. I haven't had any other guests talking about sexuality. We talk spirituality, we talk hormones, we talk, the body changing and all of the things that go with that sort of midlife transition. But sex is one thing that gets missed.
Exactly. Until now.
Until The Sure Thing got created by you. So do you want to kick us off by telling us a little bit about your background story, how you came to be doing this work as a sensuality coach, what a sensuality coach actually is, and we'll go from there.
Well, I started my life as I like to call it on the conveyor belt of life. I was a people pleaser. I was the quintessential good girl, trying to get approval from everyone, especially authority figures, parents, teachers, and that kind of thing. So I ended up in my late 20s marrying someone who I had absolutely no chemistry with. However, he looked good on paper, perfect for my parents, that type of thing. And a few years into putting us both through the ringer of seeing every therapist and trying to find him in my heart, where the thing was, he was already in my heart. I loved him, but he just wasn't in my yoni. There was no chemistry, there was no fire, there was no passion there, and there never was. So in my early 30s, I did a medicine journey with a Hakomi therapist, and the whole day journey felt like this rebirth. And at the end of the day, she said, well, where does this guy fit in? And it was so crystal clear, he doesn't fit in. And so that night, I was the most courageous thing I'd ever done in my 31 years or something, was going back to our home in Coal Valley, San Francisco, and telling him that I wanted to separate, that I wanted a divorce. And as I'm standing in my clarity, I still remember how empowering that felt, and he's sobbing on the couch, and I knew that I could make it all better. I could just push aside this part of me that knew what she wanted and just capitulate to his desires, go back to the pattern of being the accommodator, being the people pleaser. And I didn't. I had the strength and the courage, which I didn't have the years before when he proposed, to say, no, this is not right for me. And it's okay to say no, and it's okay, and I can be strong and witness him and be compassionate for what's happening for him right now, but that doesn't mean I have to just roll over. And so, as an aside, I freed us both from this relationship that was a mismatch. And because what I found, if one person in a couple is feeling a mismatch, guess what? They really both are. Even if one person doesn't see it yet, isn't willing to look and be really brutally honest with themselves. So he found another partner, he has a family, and so out of that, I felt like I am free now. I had a friend a dear, dear sister friend of mine who's still very close, who was very involved in what I called this pleasure community in San Francisco. I called them the pleasure people. And she was hosting a pleasure course at her house. And that was my first entree in early 2002 into this world of exploring pleasure and orgasm and having research partners, where I was a serial monogamist up until that point. From teenage, when I started dating, to my early 30s, I was always I'd meet somebody, we'd start a monogamous relationship, and that just happened. It seems so. And then you start to get to know someone. When I think about that, it sounds so silly that, you commit to somebody and then you start to get to know them. But okay. So, and a couple months later, I had signed up for the advanced pleasure course, and I didn't even want to go. I figured, how much more could I know? I mean, come on, I've already done the pleasure course. It's fine. It's wonderful. I'm enjoying it. I show up that morning because I'd already prepaid for the course, and luckily, and in the kitchen, I had one of those encounters where I looked into this man's eyes and I felt like I knew him from another lifetime, from something. Turns out he becomes my first, we started as research partners, researching orgasm and pleasure together. This was a label that this community used to not box people in to a relationship if they wanted to explore pleasure and orgasm. And so that's where we began. We're married now we've been together now since 2002. We started in an open relationship. And so that's where I began exploring and experiencing the infinite nature of pleasure and orgasm. And from there, I started a women's group that was called Sensual. That was a 3-month course about women falling more deeply in love with themselves and connecting in with their authentic voice and their passion and activating that. And meanwhile, I was ordained as a priestess in the 13 Moon Mystery School. And so I was walking that path, and then was certified to teach their year-long immersion into the sacred feminine mysteries, which are 13 different archetypal energies. And having, and what we explore is connecting with these different archetypes. And archetypes are available to all of us, no matter what our temporary gender or race or religion or whatever it is, but there are form constants that we can tap into and connect with our own unique expression of the Great Mother, or the Goddess of Compassion, or the Goddess of Love, the Primal Goddess, all of these different energies. And so I wove in the sensual teachings, and very embodied, very sensual, and that's where I taught for about a decade. And meanwhile, Bill and I get married, we have a child, and as it all often happens, is the responsibilities of parenthood and life and work, and then our sexy, really wonderful sex life took a way back seat. And so that happened. That went on for about 12 years. And Nadine, we tried all kinds of things, all kinds of suggestions from experts, books we read, what friends were trying, just everything. And there was and like all couples, there was a mismatch in desire. All couples don't have the exact same level of desire. And our desire changes, right? So often there's one partner who has higher desire and one partner who has lower desire, but then that can shift, right? That can shift hormonally, when our hormones change as women, when we go through perimenopause, when we go through menopause, and all kinds of things can change that. So even the dynamic with me being the higher desire person, so I was more reaching out to him, trying to initiate. However, because of the rejection that I would experience, then when he would reach out, I would be like, no, right? I'm not going to give that to
Revenge.
you. You rejected me. Yeah, right? And so that whole disempowering kind of spiraling down dynamic that that we suffered through, really. And yet, like so many couples, we loved each other, we did life well together, we were parenting well together, all of these things were going well, except the sexual intimacy. And I would say overall intimacy was really lagging. And in 2018, I was in a car with a friend who was wanting a weekly consort. She was a single mom at the time, and she wanted to get her double mitzvah on Shabbat. Shabbat is the Jewish Sabbath. Happens on Saturday, sundown Friday to sundown Saturday. And I learned when I was in Hebrew high school that if you have sex on Shabbat, you get a double mitzvah, which is a double good deed. So you're building up good karma. We love the sex positivity of some Jewish interpretations, which is one of them that I learned. So we were talking about, she's talking about she wants a Shabbat consort. I said, heck, I want a Shabbat consort too. And then it occurred to me, it's a sure thing, a Shabbat unification ritual, where you come together, and have intimacy with someone. Okay, well, that's in 2018. There's so much built up gunk and resentment between me and my spouse that it's not until December 2020, after I committed to a friend that I would invite him into this practice, that I actually did. And after we made love, our son was at a drum lesson on a Saturday. And I said, I'm going to do it. I'm doing it. Because it's having a sacred witness, committing to somebody outside yourself is a really powerful support mechanism. And that's what had me just go through the gunk and the fear of rejection again. And just have the courage to say, you know what, I'm going to do this. We made love. In the afterglow, I said, hey, babe, what would you think about having a weekly practice where we deepen in intimacy, connection, and pleasure together? And he said, sounds great, sugar. Let's do it. And it was as simple as that, Nadine, because then the next Saturday, our son had the drum lesson. That was our time. And then we just turned towards each other. It was no longer about if we're going to have sex, if we're not going to have sex, if I'm in the mood. And it's not about having sex. Actually, the sure thing is about deepening my sure thing is about deepening in intimacy, connection, and pleasure with myself or with my spouse. The sure thing is a totally personalized practice. So the first thing that we do is you set an intention. That's our intention. So you notice there's nothing about orgasming or sex in there. Now, does that happen often? Absolutely, yes. There's lots of orgasms often, but it's not required. So it's not this performative, goal-oriented activity. It's about turning towards each other and cultivating a pleasurable experience together. And so and I was honestly amazed at the years, over a decade of withholds and resentment and abandonment, all of it. It was almost disappeared immediately because it doesn't exist here. All that existed was this pleasure practice that I could look forward to and knew that come Saturday, that was going to be our time. And we were reliable. We were committed, both of us, to this practice. And so we did it. And about 6 months, and it was miraculous. This whole part of myself, Nadine, that I hadn't, in little interludes, sexual interludes in my 20s and 30s, I recognized this part, but I really didn't have a deep, intimate knowing of my wild, sensual self. And now this part had a canvas every week to play and explore, and she has a huge appetite for embodied activity. So I learned to ski in my 50s. I started training in Aikido, all these embodied things that I was never an athlete, never into any of that until I started this weekly pleasure practice. And so about 6 months after we're practicing weekly, and not like I said, sometimes I didn't feel like it, didn't want to, but it was just about turning towards each other. And after one of our practices, I turned to Bill and it dawned on me, and I said, babe, I think I'm gonna have to write a book about this because it's been such a miracle. I want to share this with other people. I know other people are struggling like we were for so long. And so that's where the book came from.
There it is. So, wow, what a story. Before we sort of dive into the contents of the book, there are a couple of things that I want to ask you. I'm just curious, because you started a pleasure practice, you were in the community that you mentioned. So did this really feel like, I mean, not most people don't do something like that in their 30s, right? So
Right.
does it feel like a continuation of that experience? Or do you feel like that whole experience was just to meet Bill?
I feel like both.
Okay.
I feel like that what that experience had me do was, and this is common in a lot of relationships, is those first year, 2 years, 3 years, they say maximum, where there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of lust, there's a lot of hot sex, right? And so that's what we had. So, and
Yeah.
maybe that lasted a little bit longer than that, but that's what we had, as most do. The practice that in the pleasure community that we were in was a practice called deliberate orgasm, which I talk about in the book. And it's about where one person is receiving, is at effect, and another person is at cause. So one person is stroking another person's genitals, essentially. And so I give very detailed instructions of that particular practice, which is a wonderful thing to have in, as in an array of sexual possibilities and sensual possibilities. So, however, the sure thing really came out of this kind of desert experience of lack of sensuality. It wasn't even about sexuality. It was more about a closeness with, wanting to be close, wanting to really feel good in my body in the presence of my spouse. And what I realized after we'd been practicing, and I think Bill was traveling and then he was sick, and so there were several weeks that we didn't practice, and I could feel myself getting cranky again, and I kind of had a shorter temper. And then I realized, wait a second, why am I waiting for him? Why don't I just do this solo? And so that's when I started the solo sure, that you can absolutely practice by yourself. I practice often by myself. And people who aren't in relationships, you don't have to be in a relationship at all to practice a sure thing, because it's a love replenishing practice and nourishing, nurturing practice to really fill ourselves up. And so whether we're doing that with ourselves and with a partner, with multiple partners, however you like to roll, as long as we're consenting adults, that's great.
Amazing. What else? Okay, let's talk about this whole point in our lives. You had it with Bill when you got married, you had a child, and all of a sudden the light seems to be switched off when it comes to sensuality and sexuality. How much do you think, or I think that's an experience for many of us, how much do you think that is related to perimenopause, menopause? And like, is this, oh God, my question could go in several different directions. Yeah, how much do you think it is related to our hormonal shifts? Let's just go there, because I nearly
Well,
went
you
off on a
start there
tangent.
first.
Yeah.
I feel like that's part of it. That's certainly part of it. I mean, there's a changing landscape even before perimenopause.
Yeah.
So that's what I experienced. with Bill. So it didn't start when I was in perimenopause. It started before that. And so what I have come to learn is that nobody teaches us. We see Hollywood movies. We have this concept and fantasy that that's supposed to last.
Yeah.
That passion is supposed to last. We feel like then we turn on ourselves and judge our partners and blame each other when it doesn't, because we're under some false illusion that is what's supposed to sustain us for the long haul in a long-term relationship. And it's just our brain chemistry does not work that way. I mean, they've done studies to show that maximum of 3 years is when you've got the different neurochemicals that are firing at that level, right? At when you're first like in lust with somebody, right? And so, of course, and then you also recognize you're getting to know somebody in a really different way. You're seeing, the full spectrum, right? Hopefully, all the parts that are beautiful and ugly and stinky and wondrous and everything,
Annoying.
right? The whole thing, right? Because we want to be our authentic selves with each other.
Yeah.
And so all that stuff, isn't the sexiest all the time. We are not taught how to maintain intimacy. We're just not. And so that's what's missing. And so that was another reason, and I saw this in a lot of my friends, a lot of my couples, a lot of my family who are still, by some miracle, they're still married. However, I certainly wouldn't want to be in any of those relationships, right? Because there's what doubles as intimacy is a lot of bickering, right? a lot of because there's not that tenderness that arises naturally when we turn towards someone that we love on a regular basis with our open heart and with a curiosity of like, let's get closer. Let's explore something together. Let's see how good we can feel in our bodies together. And so that's where the practice comes in. And so I think it's not our fault. And many people, Nadine, and I feel it breaks my heart because many people are suffering and blaming themselves. And then that causes isolation, that causes a lot of issues in relationships, and that causes a lot of divorce. So I think that it is about practicing intimacy, and having that as an intention, having that as a priority.
Yeah.
And then when changes happen, there's health issues. People have health issues. There's menopause, there's perimenopause, there's hormonal shifts, there's death in the families, there's stress, there's job losses, there's all kinds of tension and stress that are going to happen in our lives, not to mention, all the stuff that's going on here in the US right now and in other places with rising fascism. So, we are going to have to deal with these things. So if we have like this drumbeat, this heartbeat, if you will, of a practice that we know that is taking care of ourselves and that is really tending to our partnership, then that is what's going to strengthen and really ease all of those difficult times, including menopause and perimenopause. I mean, I noticed a lot of difference in my desire, difference in sensitivity, at one point I'm like, I don't even think I have a clit anymore. I don't even know what happened to my clit. What happened? But it's coming back. It's different. And it's learning to be in acceptance of our aging bodies, because everything is changing, right? Everything is always changing, including our bodies. And so it's like, okay, well, then what feels good? Can I be just curious? like I'm a scientist. I like to call it the love laboratory, that we're, experimenting with love and pleasure, intimacy and connection. And so if we take it as an experiment, there's no wrong moves. There's no mistakes. We're just like, okay, now that didn't feel as good, but that feels a little bit better. But maybe if you, lighten the stroke a little bit, or maybe if you kiss right here, just wondering and being curious and then asking for different things.
So are you now in menopause? Do you feel like it was part of the journey? I feel like perimenopause, menopause, kind of that, well, my experience is like, it's probably a good 10 years of a transition that we go through. And I wonder if that's kind of aligned with your experience. And, your sort of that kind of cold period that you talked about. And whether like we got that to look forward to at the other end.
Here's the thing. I feel like actually we started the Sure Thing before I was still in perimenopause.
Okay.
So I still was wanting that closeness. I was desiring that closeness of the heart, even if it wasn't always of which often, because I was desiring the closeness of the heart, what happens is we have responsive desire, which we can talk about the difference between responsive desire and spontaneous desire.
Yeah.
And so responsive desire arises out of context and feeling safe and feeling pleasure. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I think I would like you to get that lube out, please. And yeah, I think that really sounds good. So for me, it was about 6 years of perimenopause, and I was, I would bleed, and then it would be like 3 months, and then I would bleed, and then 3 months, and then 6 months, and then it would be like, oh no, it's almost there, and then like 10 months, and then I have another, right? So it just, okay. So, and I think it's a changing time, and it's very individual. For me, there were things that helped, like black cohosh. I would have night sweats.
Okay.
And so, and I still take a tincture of black cohosh, which is an abortive. So do not take it if you're trying to get pregnant, if you are pregnant, unless you, but it's a natural abortive. It also helps with night sweats.
Okay.
So that was really helpful for me. I have a lot of friends who are on HRT, hormone replacement therapy, and that really works for them. A couple of years ago, I was having a pain in my toe. There's a lot of toe stuff in Aikido, where you put our toes under. And so I went to a friend who's a physical therapist, and she said, well, you're starting to have some arthritis in your toe. And I was like, I think I'm gonna get a second opinion on that. I love you, honey, but I'm gonna get a second opinion. And I have another friend who's a acupuncturist, and she's like, I'm gonna get you on this herbal. It is called an feminescence.
Oh, okay.
Feminescence. It's herbal. It's got maca in it, but it's not only maca. It's maca, and literally, about 5 days into taking this herbal supplement, it comes in a pill, capsule, my toe was fine. And then the next week, Bill and I are having our Sure Thing, and we are having penetrative sex, and he's like, honey, something's feeling different in here. And I was like, I know, it really is. I think it's the feminescence. so that has really, provided some different things, and some benefits that I didn't even know were going.
It was all about your toe.
It was all about my toe, but all of a sudden I'm more lubricated because things are feeling a little more softer in the chamber of my yoni, and so that works for me. So I think women to encourage, and I have a friend who's going through some figuring out what's going to really support her through perimenopause at this moment. And so just don't give up, keep trying. There are different things. There are different things that can work. Of course, getting enough sleep, getting enough rest, having a pleasure practice. And it doesn't have to be sexual, but having some kind of a sure thing that is tending to yourself. It could be taking a long bath. It could be making a really delicious meal for yourself. It could be taking a long walk in the woods or going to the ocean. Whatever it is that's really nourishing for your heart and for your body, that's what it's about.
Can you talk a little bit more to that? Because obviously there's, when you've been speaking already, the sure thing practice for you involves your partner and sensuality and sex, often sex or orgasm. But you've just sort of mentioned that it doesn't necessarily have to be that, and that this is about self-care and self-nourishment as well. So where does the line, where is there a line? Is the line blurry? Is it?
I like spirals. I prefer spirals to lines personally.
Yeah.
And it is, everything about the sure thing is up to you.
Okay.
You get to say, I have so many suggestions, so many ideas, so many exercises in the book. It's an interactive playbook, really.
Yeah.
And so whatever it is that you personally want, there are people who aren't interested in sex and orgasm. They can still have a sure thing practice, because it is about love replenishment. It is about nourishment and nurturance of ourselves and of one another. And so, yes, in the book, there's sexual instruction. Like I said, I talk about the deliberate orgasm. I talk about our wild, sensual self. And and there are a multitude of also suggestions of how you can practice a sure thing that don't involve any kind of sex. So it's really up to whoever is practicing. What is your intention? What is your intention? At the core, Nadine, is about falling more in love with ourselves, because that's what happens. Because when I am in unconditional love and acceptance with myself, then that overflows into my relationship and into my family and into my work and into my community and out into the world. And so at the heart of the book, and if you're interested in falling in unconditional love with yourself, get this book, because this will really be a support and a guide and like a friend. Like, it's like I wrote it as if I'm walking with you and you're walking with me on this path to deeper self-love and self-acceptance.
Yeah. I've been reading the book, so I totally get that, and I would love to talk more about that, because I feel like there's so much to unpack. There is really a lot of psychology as well as physiology, or sexuality. It's really about there is a lot in the book about becoming more self-aware, being more compassionate with ourselves. And I see lots of parallels really with having a spiritual practice. Can you talk, let's go back a little bit, and I'd just love to hear your what you have to say about shame, because I think this is something that's definitely associated with sex for many of us. It's it's a taboo subject. We're not supposed to be here talking about it.
Right. Well, who says that?
Who did say it? That? And it runs so deep, doesn't it?
Who said it, and why are we listening to that guy? Because certainly it's a guy, I would guess he's a white guy. It's a white guy who's trying to tell us what to do. And I
I
have
see your midlife rebel coming out here.
woo, you know it, you know it.
Uh,
I call it in the book. I call it the puritanical patriarchy.
mm,
I define that for us as essentially the air we breathe in, the society we
yeah.
live in is this puritanical. I mean, I live in the US where the Puritans actually landed, right? And so it infused that ethos of work first, work is what's valued, pleasure is unnecessary, at all. And we just need to work. And that's where you need to, and you need to, that's the priority. And then the patriarchy, which is, the misogynistic domination where men are supreme, right? And women are there to serve and to be, uh, to accommodate to the needs of the men.
Yeah. What
And
amazes me is that it seems to be global. Like it doesn't matter whether you're looking at tribes or, different cultures. There's this deep underlying oppression, or maybe it's not underlying, of women. And it like how is that even possible that it's a worldwide thing? I just can't fathom it.
yes, and it is changing. I really believe it's because it is a worldwide thing, because the, the domination culture is just that. It is there to dominate, and it has spread across the globe. It's been happening for thousands of years, and the religious interpretation of Christianity and even Judaism and other religions have aligned with
Yeah.
that domination of women, domination of life, domination of the earth
Yeah.
herself,
Yeah.
right? And so, and women threaten that, like empowered women who are really connected to our Shakti, connected to, our sexual power, because our sexual center, where is that? That's in our womb.
Yeah.
That's where our creativity is. That's where our passion is. That's where all of that is. And so the patriarchy was designed to repress that, to sever, and to not only repress that within individual women, but to pit women against each other.
Yeah.
And so keep them fighting each other, right? And then they won't turn on the men to be like, no, enough. And it's the same thing that's done with any kind of scapegoat or any kind of, turn on in the US here, turn on the immigrants. So that you won't turn on the ruling elite, who are the ones who are really, the ones who are repressing and
Yeah.
oppressing the masses. And so that's the patriarchy. What happens with shame, and how does the patriarchy dominate people is with fear,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so using fear and pitting each other against one another, so we don't collectively turn against the powers that be. With shame, it's used the exact same way that the patriarchy uses fear, except we turn it on ourselves. So there's a judgment. So maybe it's a judgment of a parent.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a societal judgment of, you shouldn't be having sex, or something maybe happened when a lot of us, when we were kids, we were maybe exploring our bodies, totally natural, of course, and somebody saw us and shamed us because they were not open in their own sexuality or sensuality, or conditioned in this puritanical patriarchy. So we have their judgment on us, and then we turn it on ourselves, like we have done something wrong. And what it does to us is it has us isolate. And there have been studies that show that shame separates, shame represses, and shame has us get smaller, right? And has us disconnect from ourselves and disconnect from people around us. And so of course we have to recognize that shame is being used as a weapon.
Yeah.
That's its point. Its point is to try and repress us and have us be small. I believe that part of the reason, I don't know if y'all are following what's happening with the Epstein files, just ridiculous. Part of the reason I believe that the Justice Department released all of the names, many names of the survivors, and even some photos of the survivors, right? And of course they redacted all of the wealthy names of the pedophiles, right? Because they wanted to use shame as a weapon to try to,
they don't want to talk about it, don't want it to be public. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe that they'll get so ashamed that they'll, go
Pull
back
back.
into hiding,
Yeah.
and they won't. So it's used against us. So let's recognize that this is being used as a weapon, and we say, no, we see it for what it is. We see it for what it is, and we say, no, we are not going to be shamed. We are going to go back, and there's an exercise in the book that's called Shedding the Shackles of Shame, where we can literally go back, and I have done this with myself, and I when I need to, I do it again. I've led many people through it, where we can go back to those moments where shame was kind of accosted us, right? Where shame was weaponized, was used as a weapon against us by someone who knows that they probably had no idea what they were doing. They were in their own limited consciousness. Anyway, however, it had an effect on us. We can go back to that moment and reclaim ourselves in that moment and rewrite what happened and see how shame is used and how we were a victim to it, and then we reclaim our own sovereignty from the shame. And so that's what we have to do, and to really be fully fulfilled in our sexuality and embodied in our fullness is to reclaim and not fall for getting sucked into being ashamed of something.
Yeah.
Because we didn't do anything wrong. Shame is different than regret. Regret is when we kind of miss the mark, right? And we, said something to a loved one or to anyone that, it slipped out, or we were really angry and we said something really mean, and, and we know we can do better. And so then you have to make amends. Maybe you apologize, whatever you need to do to clean that up. Regret is a wonderful thing where, we have our values and then we slip up and we make a mistake. Shame is something that is put on us.
Okay. Yeah.
And that we then adopt. And so it's about separating that out, discerning that is not us, discerning whose voice is that?
Yeah.
Was that my dad? Was that the teacher? Was that the patriarchy? And I have a game that I call a name the shame game. And so as soon as I start to feel shame in myself, like a little of it, or in someone else, I say, hello, shame. It's been a second. Hello, what's going on?
Welcome
and then
back.
I turn towards it. Exactly. Welcome back. And then whose voice is that?
Yeah.
Who is that? And just discerning who is that, and recognizing that it's not nothing about me. It is not about me. It's just trying to repress me. In fact, when I was writing the book and I was writing this part about shame, I am very involved in my local community. And so I was imagining what became the Sure Thing Love experiment, which I'll tell you about. And I was, in my head, I started to think, well, who's going to do that? And who's going to even want to do that?
Yeah.
And people are literally dying. People are starving right now. People are dying. People are getting abducted. Like, who has time for this pleasure? This is ridiculous. And so and then I was like, wait a second, whose voice is that? And I stopped and I started playing Name the Shame game, because I'm like, oh my goodness. And it was a friend of mine who is a hardcore activist. And I was like, okay, I'm making up that this is what she's going to project onto me. And what did it do? It was trying to squish my creative ideations in that moment and my passion for bringing this out into the world. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, no, I'm not going to give in to that made up possible projection of shaming myself so I can belittle this energy of sensuality and passion and pleasure. And so I thought, okay, well, I gotta weave that into the book, because this is important, because this is how we mind fuck ourselves, right? Because of being part in the puritanical patriarchy, that the society that we live in right now, we have to recognize that, of course, that's what that domination wants us to do.
And it's been doing it for such a long time that it's passed on from generation to generation, totally. Not to mention the potential for it to be literally in our DNA, you know? Mm-hmm. But the book is just great in that respect, because it really does help you to start unpacking all of the limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves. Can you tell us about the Inner Pantheon? I love that. I think it's such a good thing. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, who's got the mic?
Right. I love that game. I love that game. That's so empowering.
It's so
Thank
cool.
you for asking that question. So about 25 years ago, I was reading a book by Barbara Marx Hubbard she talked about local selves and naming, like she was talking about a high self and then their local selves. And so I then kind of adopted that idea. I started like trying to figure out different parts of my personality. And I thought, it feels more like it's an inner pantheon, like the Roman and Greek pantheons, the gods and goddesses, that we have our own inner pantheon. All the different parts, all the spiritual parts, all the personality, all the aspects. And so I started to name them, because as soon as I named a part, somebody said the other day, name it to claim it. I guess that's what the therapist says. And so you claim it, and you can get to know it. And then you can see, so I have Penelope, my inner perfectionist planner.
Yeah.
And so, she's really helpful in a lot of circumstances. But if I'm parenting, not so great. She's a little like heavy-handed and overbearing, so I've learned to be like, no, take the mic out of Penelope's hand when I'm parenting, better to give to the great mother part. Right? Yeah. And so really identifying all of these different parts of ourselves, and in all of our inner pantheons, there's a wounded child. There's always a wounded child, our inner kid, and there's an inner lover, and perhaps a wild sensual self. For me, they're both the same, the inner lover and wild sensual self. Some people have two different aspects. And then I have a disassociated D. That was the part that was very active in the first 30 years of my life. Accommodating Astrid, lots of different righteous Rita. Oh my, can I get righteous? Man. So playing with these different parts, and then like you said, who's got the mic? So you can imagine they're all sitting at like King Arthur's round table, but we're at a consciousness round table with all the different parts of you. Your inner pantheon are all sitting around, and there's one microphone in the center of the table. So only one part of you can talk at any one moment. And so as we get to know these different parts, we can then feel and sense who's got the mic, and then figure out, is that the best person to have the mic in this moment, or is it someone else? And what I've found with myself and with the people that I work with and I support are that when we are wanting to expand our capacity for pleasure, take on a sure thing practice, a practice like this, we have to make sure that all parts of ourselves are along for the ride, especially our inner kid. Because if the inner kid is not feeling comfortable and safe, then it's not going to end up how we want it to end up. We're not going to fulfill our intention. So we have to really take our little kid into our lap. I love the self-hug, get them up. And in the book, there's a guided journey to connect with this part of yourself and really get to know, all these different parts, so that it's so empowering. It's really fun. And then it's like, if something is feeling like, if my partner and I are engaged in a sure thing, and something's like not feeling well, what I do is I'm like, well, wait a second, who has the mic right now? Like, what's going on? And then if it's not Vivacious Viv, who's my wild sensual self, then I'm pretty much gonna take that mic out of whoever's hand that is and give it to Vivacious Viv if what I'm wanting to do right now is practice a sure thing. If what I'm wanting to do right now is sit on my meditation cushion and do my Zazen practice, my sitting practice, then Viv is not the best person to give the mic to in that moment. Penelope may be okay because she's really good at like monitoring my thoughts and things. But so it becomes this game of really getting to know ourselves and being facile with shifting the mic to suit whatever the situation.
It brings us back, really, doesn't it, to presence. Taking a moment and actually beginning to observe ourselves in that moment and make more conscious decisions about the choices we make, the way that we speak, who's holding the mic. I love that. It's such great imagery, so simple, but really makes so much sense. So as I've said before, I feel like the sure thing practice in the book, it's not that simple, really, is it? Like, there is a bit of work that we need to do to really come face to face with who we are in the most positive way. And just start to observe what's going on in our lives, why we might not want to have a sure thing even. Like, is that truth your truth, or is it something that you've learned from an experience? Is it because of shame? Is it because, you're not supposed to do these things and that's what you were brought up to be a good girl, or whatever it is? And really sort of take some time to work on yourself so that you can get to a point where you're able to get it on with your husband.
Well, and I'll tell you, yes, it takes effort.
Yes.
It takes effort, and it takes time, and it takes commitment, and it takes devotion. And it's, what are you devoted to? And that's why I'll say again, the intention. Coming back to something that you really want. I mean, the intention that you set for your sure thing is something that lights you up. When you hear it, it turns you on and you say, yes, I want that. Because that is what you're devoted to. I love this definition of devotion is serving something with love, serving something I love with love. So you're serving your intention, whatever that is.
Yeah.
So you decide. And so that is what propels you. And to recognize that, yeah, it's going to take some effort, and the return is, what I found is that after you several weeks, several months, you begin to that's the rhythm. And the overflow that comes back from just showing up and turning towards yourself or turning towards your partner and asking the question, what would be most pleasurable right now, could simply start like that. It is just an overflow of abundant energy, and that I try it. Don't take my word for it. Try it for yourself.
Yeah.
And recognize that there's nothing to be ashamed of, and there's nothing, even if it's been many, many years since you felt turned on, since you felt like you wanted to really explore pleasure in your body or with your partner. It's okay. It's okay. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. You can start right now, and it's about just setting that intention. It's like if we're in a canoe, setting that oar, like where we're headed. We're headed for the bank. So you just set that oar in, and you're gliding down the river. And I tell you, the momentum of the energy, it feels like, because I don't know, maybe because of the puritanical patriarchy that has dominated the energies of our beautiful Mama Gaia, that I just feel like there is this gush and geyser of energy that is just waiting for us to tap into and just like be willing to crank open. And then it just whoosh, it just wants to flood out and surround us and fill us up and nurture us and connect us with each other and bring more joy. So I just really, I feel that.
That's pretty inspiring. And, for me, I just think it's worth doing the work, isn't it? If we're trying to, as a female collective, let's say, undo some of that oppression or all of it,
Yes.
then, the amount of freedom and empowerment
That's right.
that we can tap into.
Yes.
That's inspiring stuff.
And it opens up this creative channel. I mean, so much opens. And so even as you're doing the work, as you say, in the playbook, there are journal pages.
Yep.
Use your own journal. Come up with, you may want to dance it out. You may want to shake it out. You may want to, paint yourself. Just really letting ourselves loose, letting our wild women just lead. And they're in us, that instinctual, innate part, primal energy, even though it's been totally, repressed and tried to, for millennia.
Yeah.
It's there.
And it's time.
She's ready.
It's time.
She's ready to roar.
I love it. Oh, Elana, we have hit our hour, and it's been really, a really insightful conversation. And I've been reading your book, as I said, and I encourage others, the listeners today, to grab a copy. We're going to share all of your details in the show notes and in our guest directory so that people can find you easily. Any Wonderful. Closing words as we say farewell?
I feel like this is our moment, ladies. This is our moment, because we have to stand firm in our hearts, in our yonis, with this Shakti energy rolling, so that we can trailblaze the path for so many people forward and backwards. So this is the time when it feels like it's getting stronger, that it's really, I believe, the patriarchy is hanging on by its fingernails. And this is a time of dissolution. So the more that we can be really vivid and clear in our own selves, in our authenticity, in what feels really good and right to us, we will not be bullied. We cannot be gaslit when we are solid and clear and connected in with that energy. So join me, and we are doing this.
Let's do it, girl. Thank you so much for joining me, Elana. It's been really cool.
Yeah, thank you for having me.